upgraded this laptop's GPU. It's the Framework 16, the only laptop with upgradable graphics at the moment. When it first launched around 2 years ago, AMD's RX 7700S graphics were your only choice. But now they've got an Nvidia RTX 5070 upgrade option, and I've tested both in 19 games to find out all the differences. Both GPUs have 8 gigs of VRAM, but the newer 5070 uses faster GDDR7 memory, and in the Framework 16, both GPUs are able to run up to 100 watts. The GPU upgrade process is extremely simple. Framework's website has everything you need in terms of firmware and driver updates, but basically you just undo some screws, slide the old GPU out, slide the new GPU in, screw it back in, and install the Nvidia drivers. My original Framework 16 came with a Zen 4 processor, but they've also got a Zen 5 upgrade option too, which offers more cores and threads. The CPU upgrade process is a bit more complex as you're replacing the entire motherboard, but following the guide on Framework's website made it extremely easy. In terms of multi-core performance, we're looking at a 23% increase with the newer Ryzen HX 370 processor, and a 19% boost to single-core performance. Interestingly, power draw with the game running wasn't all that different between the 3 different configurations I tested. I found the newer GPU with older CPU to use the most power, while newer GPU plus newer CPU used the least. And from a performance per watt perspective, anything with the newer RTX 5070 graphics was better compared to the older Radeon RX 7700S, but temperatures were warmer with the newer GPU. Of course, assuming it's even fair to compare AMD and Nvidia here, as the way their sensors measure temps is different. Assuming it is fair, the RTX 5070 runs warmer with a similar amount of power used, but the newer hardware is more power efficient, resulting in longer battery life with the game running. Just swapping the GPU from the 7700S to the 5070 increased runtime by 20%, while upgrading both the CPU and GPU boosted runtime by 39%. As for the games, Marvel Rivals saw one of the biggest differences out of all 19 games tested. At 1080p, upgrading from the older RX 7700S graphics to the newer RTX 5070 graphics, but keeping the processor the same, we're looking at a 55% higher average frame rate with the 5070 at 1080p, or 61% faster at 1440p. But there's almost no difference upgrading from the Zen 4 to Zen 5 processor. The processor difference matters a bit more in Spider-Man 2 though. At 1080p, the Zen 5 processor was almost 10% faster than the older Zen 4 processor when both configurations had the same RTX 5070 graphics, at least at 1080p. But the CPU difference matters far less at 1440p, which is more GPU heavy. Based on this, the game is CPU limited at 1080p, which is why the 7700S and 5070 are close together. Then there's a bigger gap at 1440p where the GPU gets put to work. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a bit different, as it's a game I've found to perform better with AMD's Radeon graphics. So the older 7700S still ends up beating the more powerful 5070 graphics, even when paired with a newer processor. But Assassin's Creed Shadows was weird. Basically, the Nvidia graphics performed way worse than AMD, and I'm not sure what the deal was. I made sure the shaders recompiled with the new graphics, and even tried completely reinstalling the game fresh, but I couldn't get the Nvidia graphics performing well with my existing install of Windows. So not sure if this one had an issue with all the in-place upgrades I did, but that's an edge case. Horizon Forbidden West, on the other hand, saw massive differences with the RTX 5070 graphics. The newer Zen 5 processor didn't really change anything, but the 5070 upgrade gets us a 71% higher average frame rate at 1440p, a massive difference. Ghost of Tsushima had the biggest difference from the processor upgrade out of all 19 games tested, with a 13% higher average FPS at 1080p, though the 1% lows were much higher with the Zen 5 chip, which just means it offers a more consistent consistent, stable experience. Alright, I think you get the idea. Instead of wasting your time individually talking through the rest of the 13 games tested, I'm just going to quickly skip through the rest of the results on screen now. So feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look at any specific game. The reason I test so many games is so that we can get a much more accurate average result from a wider selection of titles, which allows us to draw a better conclusion. In other words, more data equals more better. Let's take a look at those average differences next. On average, over all 19 games tested, at 1080p, I saw a 27% higher average FPS with the RTX 5070 compared to the older 7700S with the same Zen 4 processor in both configurations. But at 1440p, the 5070 was 34% faster compared to the 7700S, as the GPU differences are typically bigger at higher resolutions. Best case, Horizon Forbidden West was 71% faster with the Nvidia upgrade. But if we instead compare the original Framework 16 configuration with the new CPU and new GPU upgrade, 1080p gaming saw a 29% boost to average FPS, while 1440p almost saw a 36% boost. So not really that much better compared to just doing the GPU upgrade. If we just compare the CPU upgrade, so the same RTX 5070 graphics in use, but older Zen 4 processor versus newer Zen 5 processor, the Zen 5 upgrade was only 2% faster at 1080p, and then less than a single percent faster at 1440p. The CPU upgrade may be worth it for other workloads, but it's probably not worth it for gaming. Here's how things look if we average the FPS from all 19 games together. This makes it easier to visually see the difference between all configurations. There's only a tiny difference between the Zen 4 and Zen 5 processors with the same RTX 5070 graphics. The biggest improvement when it comes to gaming clearly comes from upgrading the GPU, as you'd expect. And that's good news if you're primarily gaming or running GPU-bound workloads, as the CPU upgrade costs $1,050 and that's because with laptop processors, the chip is soldered to the motherboard. So essentially to upgrade, you're replacing the entire board. That's not exactly efficient, but I never recommend anyone upgrades between single generations anyway. Where things will get more interesting is further down the line, when you can go from, say, Zen 4 to Zen 6 or 7 without having to buy a new laptop. Of course, assuming Framework are able to keep future compatibility. Meanwhile, the RTX 5070 upgrade goes for $700, which is kind of expensive considering you can get a half-decent 5070 laptop for around $1,100 on sale. The older Gen 1 version of the 7700S I've got is on sale for $399. So basically, it's 75% more money to get the 5070, which isn't amazing value for a 35% boost to FPS in games at 1440p. Still, I'm impressed Framework were able to pull this off and get Nvidia on board. Get it? On board? I'm more interested in what happens further down the track when it's possible to upgrade to something much newer, because most people aren't upgrading between single generations, which is all that's currently available. But this is a great step forward in Framework's upgradable future. But it does kind of suck that they're only able to offer the Nvidia RTX 5070 laptop GPU, as that's limited to 8 gigs of VRAM, just like the 7700S from 2 years ago. And that's going to be a problem in modern games for all the reasons I covered in this one with Steve from Hardware Unboxed. Definitely check that one out next before you buy a laptop with 8 gigs of VRAM.